Hello, I'm Jenny Klochko and you're watching my podcast. Today we carry on exploring the resistance movement in Ukraine. So we looked from the academic point of view with Dr. Maglin. We heard the dramatic story of Volodymyr Zemchugov, and also you've heard the stories of partisans. Atasha was last week and the representative of Defense Intelligence. But I would like to look what is happening, how is possible to resist while you're on the occupied territories. And today we discussing more what's happening in Mariupol right now. The city we became sadly well known in the whole world during the first months of invasion. My guest today is the advisor of Mariupol Mayor Petro Andriushchenko.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I am good.
Mariupol has a very special place, and not only in my heart. I have never been in Mariupol. The enormous amount of coverage of the tragic stories on the city that I was part of. So I have a feeling that I live there, and I have people to return to. All of them spread all over the world. How does it feel to be the representative of the city with such a tragic history? Mind in the Mariupol was absolutely fantastic before the invasion.
I don't know. On one hand, I would not agree it is the city with a tragic history. This city with a heroic history. The city was fighting and resisting. It was destroyed with its citizens and punished for the fighting. I don't think about my city as a place of tragedy. I agree it is the biggest tragedy of the 21st century for now, and it will be forever. I feel it differently. From the first day of invasion, we were fighting for it tirelessly. That fact that it is known worldwide is the result of our fight. We look at it as a place where we will return. It is a home which you left, but will return. What can I say? It is my home. There is no other way. At this stage, I need to keep it positive and optimistic. It is not the time to think about tragic events and remember some bits. It is not the time. Like that part of memory does not exist for me at the moment. After the war, when we win, we will get back to it. We will open those wounds.
What is the life in Mariupol now? What is happening there? What's the picture of the reality there now?
It is a difficult question, because it is a complete paradox. If I needed to describe it with one word, that would be a paradox. I will explain what exactly I mean. People were robbed of their normal life. I don't even mean the emotional part of the events. I mean people's daily routine. They don't have a usual public transport or social infrastructure or electricity. The lifts are not working. The internet connection is awful. For instance, to send photos to each other, they need to compress it first. I think we used to do it 30 or 20 years ago. They got back to the past. At the same time, the current authorities try to say that how it was. People got used to it now. It became their normal now, but it is not. The city is functioning. There's water supply, electricity, gas, and even heating partly. There is food. There is no humanitarian catastrophe on one hand. On the other hand, it's a total disaster. They don't have a usual thing of the today's civilized life. Let's not forget, they are under occupation. It is tough mentally to be there. There have been the social changes. The best example to understand how everything had changed, if you think of the Russian Revolution in 1917, when Bolsheviks got the power. People who good lives and had everything became nothing. They have to obey to the marginals. This is Mariupol today. It is common for the occupied territories. Mariupol became the best illustration of it. Uneducated marginals run the city at the moment. They have no knowledge or skills. They tell the citizens of Mariupol how to live or behave. It is the moment when you would never believe that these sorts of people be in your life. These marginals have the power and run everything. It is a serious and scary thing. It looks like Orwell reality. This is what it's about.
What kind of relationship do people have, for example, between neighbors? Let me explain why I'm asking. I'm in touch with many people from Mariupol. They are civilians, not serving in the army. They are volunteers. There are volunteers among them. I was interested in if there are opportunities to protest or manifest owned Ukrainian position or something like that. There's a story of a woman who said Slava Ukraini 2 years ago, or she had the Ukrainian leaflets. Her neighbors reported on her to the authorities. It turned her life into a nightmare. It is impossible to get her and her child out of the city. Are there the indications of mass Stalinism when everyone reporting on everybody to get some benefits from the authorities or something else from the Russian representatives?
I would not say that everybody reporting on everyone. However, there is a community of the pro-Russian citizens. They wanted to be part of Russia, and they use it to the bit. Everyone knows it. People are disappearing after somebody reported on them, creating problems for them. They use it. It is the reality of Mariupol. I have many examples of it. Also, it has been more than 2 years since we started the resistance movement in Mariupol, and we pulled out more than 100 people because of it. I mean those who were in danger because they were reported by somebody. I can't reveal the details and what kind of people, but our resistance movement saved around 150 people. Otherwise, they would just disappear. There are so many stories. It is so sad. It is about 10% of the people support Russia, some of them more active, some less. They all stayed in the city. In figures, it would be around 15,000 people, working adults. They are all able to do it. The worst part is they understand they are the force, and they can take revenge those whom they always were jealous because of someone's beautiful wife or great career. Now they can make anybody's life miserable, and they make most of it. It is the motivation behind all the reports. It's the loser's approach who achieved nothing in life. They have nobody to blame apart of themselves. They can't blame for own failure Zelensky, Ukraine or Russia. It's their own fault. They are looking whom to blame, and most popular case is Ukraine to blame. It is the same like it was with German Nazis when the Jews were appointed to be guilty for everything. Now the Russians and pro-Russian Ukrainians blame Ukrainian people for everything that bad happened to them. Absolutely the same. Yes, that's why we are dealing with Stalinism. There is one thing is missing from Stalinism. It's the mass shootings of the people because of those reports. However, 10,000 people have been arrested and disappeared.
Do you know where they were taken? Where did they disappear?
It started with the filtration camp, the last time those people were seen during the filtration camps. Then in the Olenivka prison, where Russian killed Azov defenders. It was the place where the arrested civilians were held together with POWs. After that explosion and mass murder in Olenivka, those people were sent to the prisons in Donbass, according to our information. Later, they were transferred to the Russian prisons somewhere. We don't know where they sent, what they're guilty of, what the conditions of their captivity. These are the questions without answers. Nobody knows. Absolutely nobody knows.
So I understand these are ordinary civilians, and it is very difficult to exchange them. There is no data of them, and then to prove their details and the location is impossible. There is a mechanism to exchange the servicemen, but these people are lost.
It is so. It looks like they lost, but I don't want to say it. The same situation is with children. You need to know basis details, like first name, paternal name, and the family name to exchange or return anybody via official channels in Russia. We don't have this information. It is a deadlock. Russians have the information. We have no access to it. It won't be any progress here until we get the register of these people. Same reason why such a small number of the returned children from Russia. If the child was kidnapped or parents were killed, it's the same story, the absence of name and surname. The starting point is to have this information. If you don't have it, then this person does not exist. But I will repeat, according to our calculations, at least 10,000 people in Russian captivity. The civilians are considered dangerous for Russia.
How about protest and resist, or support the resistant movement? Especially when you are in the occupation with your children and family, if they survived in the nightmare that happened in Mariupol. How to carry on exploding the train tracks, or even spread the leaflets? How to do it? Who does it?
People, ordinary Mariupol citizens. The case of our resistance is unique. It can be relevant for all people around the world, because all the supporting materials I looked at in the process of our activity. So those are about the partisan war, which is different from ours. It has nothing in common with reality. Those instructions textbooks relevant for Iraq and Iran, because all of that rely on the specially prepared people who can make explosives and explode everything. In practice, when Russians occupy the city, you cannot prepare these people for something like that. We managed to create this resistance movement. First, they should love their motherland. Secondly, to feel responsible for your country and mean it. Also being motivated to do something. These are three elements are essential, and then step by step. Interesting that everyone likes something impressive and tangible, like explosions, leaflets, something else. However, the reality is, when the huge amount of work for resistance is invisible, but the result is fantastic.
For example?
Recent example, the warehouse with several tons of ammunition was destroyed last week in the village near Mariupol. Ukraine's armed forces hit it precisely. This warehouse was identified by our resistance movement. If it wasn't Mariupol Resistance movement, nobody would find out about it. These are the things that any other intelligence would spend lots of time to identify it, or you will never find it. Let's be honest, Russians are not fools. There is no dramatic story, just priceless information. Here's another story. Remember the hitting 2 intelligence planes, A-50? Mariupol Resistance movement did it. It would be impossible to do it without them. They found them, and where they were based, watched its movements, and then our armed forces and defense intelligence did their bid. Can you imagine the price of those airplanes? These people are ordinary citizens of Mariupol who did it. I am very proud of them. That is a fantastic result, and we can be proud of its achievement. How can you show it to the audience? The only thing we can do is to publish the photographs to prove our surveillance on this case. There are many stories like this one. We have oil depots in our portfolio, smaller and bigger cases. Not every operation is successful. The main task for the resistance is providing information. For example, enemies' whereabouts, secret information, access to the secret info, location of the ammunition warehouses, top officers, personnel. All this information is more important than any leaflets. However, the leaflets are needed to manifest the presence of the resistance movement to the enemy, to the world, and for the neighbor. That is how we built the resistance movement around Ukrainian letter Y, which became visually present in Mariupol. It was our know-how. It was a huge adventure. It worked out, became successful. It's a great case.
I remember the first pictures with letter Y in Mariupol. It was such a great joy, even for me, for journalist, because I thought there were only Russia's supporters stayed in the city. My thinking was that all Ukraine's supporters were killed or left. Mariupol, I remember how happy I was seeing these first indications of the resistance movement and the hope for victory. I don't know how the Mariupol citizens felt about it. I was endlessly happy. It is a very Ukrainian and very inspiring letter. I'm personally very interested in the resistance movement for the podcast and for me, so I notice among the known stories on partisans, usually they are young men who survived the impossible, inspired by Cossacks, don't think much about consequences, achieve the impossible on their missions. The most common things they do is steal cars, ammunition, or explode everything. I understand that these people attract the unwanted attention and suspicion. At the same time, the shop assistant in the cafe who sells pies may know more of the secret information but does not look suspicious. Girls can be a great source of information. Beautiful girls can have access to this sensitive info and won't be suspected of spying. We cannot identify, but we can draw a typical picture of people who bring the information bit by bit, and it can end up in a successful and high-profile operation like destroying aircraft, A-50s.
Just a human being. I can't give away any more details, if being honest. It doesn't matter male or female. Age is not important, just an ordinary person. They can't be overexcited during operation. They all are so different. Their social status differs. You are absolutely right. I will explain what I mean. From the first days of war, before creating our resistance movement, I told my team that Ukrainian babushka, with phone and camera, is able to do more than a whole unit of the special forces. That's exactly how it works. The main thing is not to attract attention, because excitement and inspiration won't last long. Also, we care about the safety of our people more than anything. Sometimes we have to stop them from doing because the risks are too high. You cannot be too careful in this business. These people are so different. We have one important rule. We don't work with people under 18. Yes, the person legally must understand own risks. It is unethical to use kids. At the same time, we keep an eye on those kids to be able to protect them from themselves, especially after that tragic case when teenagers were killed. We don't want to repeat the story. We work in this direction. We evacuated family with a boy with a very similar story that happened in Berdyansk when 2 teenagers were killed by Russians for their pro-Ukrainian activity. We do it in a different way. They have one thing in common, they all have a university degree. It is a person with cultural background. We don't deal with marginals. Sometimes we can pay marginals to burn something. They care only about money. Good working relationships. No patriotic feelings, only business. Patriotism holds us together with our people. As an example, the person who were involved in the operation of destroying aircrafts asked to sign the flag by the intelligence representative as a memory for what had been done. It's just for you to understand their motivation. They don't care about money or awards. They care about the feeling to do something important for their country. So if you understand their motivation, you can draw the picture of the resistance movement member.
Все, это смерть, пацаны. Прощайте. Слава Украине.
Budanov has signed the flag. No?
We don't have connections so high. We don't have very good relationships with top officials, with our intelligence. Probably because we have different approaches. They take it as a military. I am pretty sure that Atesh is a big friend of them. We are not, because we are proud, and we have own demands for our people's safety. Our people are not servicemen, they are civilians. We have some differences. Although it does not stop us from cooperating with everyone, but we keep our independence. We are independent team. On one hand, we are the demilitarized team. On the other hand, we work productively with all military organizations. We always share our information. We are a strange and complex structural team without somebody on the top who tells us what to do. Sometimes it helps us, and sometimes it helps a lot.
Do they find you or you find them with offers?
Do you mean the military guys?
No, the Mariupol citizens, like the one who asked you to sign the flag for the memories.
Well, nobody knows anybody. The system of communications in Mariupol resistant movement built in a way there is only one public known person. It's me. We did it deliberately. We decided to do so when we started the resistance and its Telegram channel, which is one of the main sources of communications. At first, it looked suspicious, so it was made decision that I am as a public figure and media personality that people can trust and interact. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. I am the verification that it is real and trustful resource. Answering your question, we find them and they find us. Sometimes people contact me directly. Sometimes they write via Telegram channel, and it always anonymous. You never know who is on the other side or where this person's location. That's why sometimes people don't know who submitted the request. For example, like it was with a flag, they coordinated the details and the flag was sent via post, that's all. There are a few other people recognizable via fundraisings and donations. They are all on Ukraine's territory and we are comfortable to reveal their identity. The most important thing that nobody on the occupied territory and particularly in Mariupol familiar with other members of the resistance movement. They have no idea about it. Sometimes these people can next to each other, having similar assignments and still have no clue about each other. We have to be careful because Russians try to get in touch with us all the time and in different ways. There were cases when they set on fire their own cars as a part of the trial and verification process. And in order to get the meeting in Mariupol with our representative, Russians are desperate to find our residents and their handlers in Mariupol. All their efforts are pointless and useless. Funny enough, their all attempts look very much similar. For instance, out of nowhere appears a person who is eager to kill and burn the enemy. We ask what exactly this person is ready to do. Reply, everything. We give some small task. You can't send them on the big assignments. We always think that on the other side it can be FSB, and we approach the newcomers very careful. FSB always does the same mistakes, always. I can't reveal what exactly while we manage to avoid them. But yes, they burn own cars on our request. The owners of the cars didn't know, and it looked like a resistance operation. I mean, as it usually the cars marked with Z and V. There are a lot of stories.
I'm wondering, among the people who come to you, if there are those who wanted to be with Russia, they were carrier of the Russian cultural code of Russian world, and now they tried what's the reality of life in Russia, and they realized about own illusions, and they want to be with Ukraine and make things faster.
I wish I could tell you this beautiful fairy tale, but no. I am sure this sort of people does not exist, do not exist at all. They are disappointed in Russian world by now, but it does not mean they immediately started loving Ukraine. These people have Russians' TV propaganda instead of brains. It is the hardest for them to recognize they were wrong, because the substantial part of their lives was mistaken. Not many are able to see it from the different social status. I guess there are some exceptions, but I doubt so.
What kind of cruelty Russians do now during occupation? I remember that video on Russian television from Mariupol, newly built residential area, when Putin himself arrived there. Do you remember? There was a voice of a woman was shouting, "Don't believe them, it's not true." I understand the Russian propaganda praised it. My first thought was, if that woman is still alive, what if they found her?
To be very careful with it. We live in era of Telegram channels, podcasts, vloggers, bloggers, where the reality is twisted. That woman who shouted to Putin from her window that everything is a lie and you were misled. It doesn't make her a hero. It is so pro-Russian woman, she wanted to open the eyes of her Tsar about his corrupted servants. Most people interpreted it as a resistance. It's trap where we twist and lie to ourselves. Why do you think we are still winning against Russians? Because they evaluate Ukrainians via own perspective, and that's their mistake, because we are different. As for this woman, we knew who she was the next day. It is just a funny situation. It illustrates Russia well to understand how they see themselves beneath the Tsar. This situation is not about resistance, unfortunately. I know this kind of people very well. I have seen many of them in Mariupol. I live in Mariupol for a very long time. There are many of them. I will never forget this story from the past, which tells you a lot about mentality of these people. The first tragedy happened in Mariupol in January 2015. The bombing and attacks on the Skidny residential part of the city. They attacked with Grad systems back then. This area is the most inhabited parts of Mariupol. My friend's neighbor's garage has got missiles in his garage. They were sticking out in the middle of it, 2 big missiles. You can easily see what direction it came from. It was from Novozovsk side where Russians controlled it. That man was Russia's supporter. This missile sticks out of his car and his garage. He looks at it and tries to convince himself it was the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian missile. He cannot believe that Russians did it. He convinced himself at the end of the day. He told the stories that Ukrainian missile was flying with reactive engine, and then halfway through it turned in 180 degrees and hit his garage. They all believed it. That's why that interpretation as a resistance is mistaken. The trap of fast news and the clickbait. This is the problem of the fast news era. It's not a big deal, but it is what it is. My team laughed about it a lot.
Do they exist, these newly built residential areas? I'm asking you because looking through your Telegram channel, where you publish the insight into the life of Mariupol, what's happening there, or how they hide the destroyed buildings with covers. I remember the photograph from the Izumrudny area, if I'm not mistaken. You signed it as, "What's wrong with it? Where are the people?" I look at it and saw some windows with lights. I tried to understand the context.
I need to explain the context. It is a game with Russian propaganda. As soon as I publish the photo with question, "Where are the people?" they issue some stories that there are lots of people. It's all started from the statement of the head of so-called Donetsk People's Republic that 280,000 people returned to Mariupol in summer 2022. Utopia. It's not true. So my question, "Where are the people?" is the continuation of this story. Where all these 280,000 people? As for the newly built blocks of flats, Russians built 5,000 flats in 2.5 years. It is something, but let's not forget they destroyed 70,000 flats. It doesn't exist anymore. It is less than a 10%. Let's be honest, they have a huge financial resource. If Russians didn't steal the way they do, it's a lot of money. If Mariupol mayor's office have this amount, we would build a new Mariupol in Kyiv region. They steal a lot. The quality of those flats is awful. The apartments that in Kyiv considered as economy class sell in Mariupol as luxury home. True, this Nevsky, the white one that looks good, where Putin came to see it, is Kyiv economy class. Its quality is very low. The block they built in Cheryomushki is the temporarily homes. It is like Khrushchevki were built in Soviet Union after the war. These are the blocks to give the temporarily refuge. It's the concrete blocks connects with foam. These flats are not for life. They should be disassembled in 2-3 years and assembled somewhere else. It is not the technology of the stationary building. They built something, repair something. You can't say they don't do anything. Let's not forget the context. Mariupol doesn't have a historical center anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. They're repaired buildings and they are empty. Nobody lives there. This is the context. Where are the people? For example, the Svoboda Square with the doves. The buildings on the square were severely damaged. Russians repaired its facades, changed windows, and cleared the insides. Nobody lives there. The buildings stand there like decorations in the city center.
Do they bring Russians?
It is another myth twisted by our media. What does it mean, they bring Russians? No, they don't send the trains full of Russians. But they do stimulate the relocation to Mariupol. The first and the last people were delivered there. It is migrants. You understand what I mean? I mean the working migrants from Uzbekistan, Tashkent. They were the first who came to rebuild and restore. They were brought because they lived in Russia in the work camps. The rest came willingly to work, because they get high salaries. That's why they're enthusiastic to move to Mariupol. Now the population of Mariupol is 50-50. 50% Ukrainians who survived, and 50% the newly arrived Russians, and 80% of those are the civilians. They erode the city. If this carry on in 5 years' time, there won't be any Ukrainians at all.
How are we going to return them? How about our hope to return the city?
That is exactly what we are doing. We are returning the city from the first day. I have no doubts that we will return it. There is no such option. There is no other way. We will return our city.
How is the occupiers' authorities work with kids and teenagers? I remember the videos of the Nahimov Naval College at the beginning of the academic year. There were kids 13, 15 years old. I'm not sure when they can join. I'm terrified thinking of that fact that the kids will be taught to defend the new motherland, and they will be used as cannon fodder for the Ukrainian army.
Not only Ukrainian army. I have another example for you from Donetsk, and then answer your question on our kids from Mariupol. In May, June 2022, after the full-scale invasion, the students of the military college in Donetsk asked to join the war voluntarily against Ukraine. These children were 21 years old. So when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014, they were 12 years old. They sincerely went to war to fight against us. This is the fate of all children in the occupied territories if we don't fight for them. As for the situation in Mariupol, I will give you the example how Russians target their propaganda. They don't care about elderly or adults. These two categories are ignored by Russian authorities if those obey the demands. All their propaganda focus is concentrated on kids. The child is an object and the subject of propaganda in Mariupol. Let me explain how it worked. On the 1st of September in 2022, when the school starts, many pro-Ukrainian families left kids at home. They didn't want to be part of Russian educational system. Our educators visited these parents and warned them, if kids miss the school, then you will lose legal rights of guardians of your children. You can homeschool them with other stuff, but the child should attend the school. We started suspecting something didn't feel right. Later it became clear that school is the main fortress of Russian propaganda. Parents are not allowed on the school grounds. Can you imagine it? Parent is not allowed to come to school. Children are locked there. The half of the day is devoted to the academic subjects, and the half of the day is for the clubs, like conversations about the important, and so on so forth. All the clubs focused on brainwashing. What happens next? The child comes home. Everybody can imagine how the parents feel when the child reproduces the narratives of Russian propaganda against Ukraine. What are you going to do? It is my favorite question. Many people behave like they know what to do and what to say in any circumstances. People like to give unwanted advices to everybody. As a father, you start to correct your child on historical events, and then kid goes back to school and says to teacher. We had such situations when teacher was told the alternative side of the events. Teacher does not approach parents about it. The teacher goes to a special person on a position of the advisor to the head teacher, who oversees ideology and propaganda at school. Usually former teacher of this school, they're no strangers, all traitors are local. This person goes to the FSB. That's it. First time you've been warned. If it happens second time, you can forget about your child. So parents make a choice to keep their mouth shut. Imagine this, when you're the most precious human turning into your personal propagandist, how quickly his propagandist narratives will resonate in your head. It is a crime. It is the biggest humanitarian crime of Russian Federation, even more than the killings of the civilians. The other powerful instrument Russians use, it is limited mobility of the locals. Most of these people never left their region. Trip to Kiev is an adventure. The school trip can be as lifetime adventure. What Russians do, they organize the school trips to Moscow and St. Petersburg. Petersburg to the special camps, where they were shown Russia, the one they want to present. Many of these kids never been in Kyiv. I don't even talk about Paris, London, Prague, or any European capital. They return absolutely in love after what they have seen, and propaganda carries on to brainwash them. Can you imagine what they are growing into? Especially if we don't do anything about it.
It is a return to Soviet times. Listen to you reminds me my family. I'm sure you have similar stories. My grandmother told me about the first artificially created famine by Stalin and became known as Holodomor. Then the second Holodomor, life in the German occupation, then liberated by Red Army, which was worse than Hitler soldiers. And there is my mom, who were a happy product of the Soviet propaganda machine. She loved and believed the Communist Party ideology narratives. She was grieving all the deaths of the Soviet leaders. Later, she realized it was all a lie and became passionate supporter of Ukraine and voting for dissident Chernobyl. There were two parallel realities living in the same family, loving each other.
That is exactly how it is. I have a theory how to deal with it. Unfortunately, it hasn't been heard by Ukraine's authorities. So how we can deal with it? Let's take the Mariupol kids. It is not a secret that all teenagers keep in touch with each other. They were in one city, grew up on the same streets. Not they all over the world. Some still in Mariupol, some in Ukraine, some in Europe, and some of them in Russia. But they are connected via social media like TikTok. We have to use it. I don't mean brainwashing them. Do you remember when in 1985, when we started feeling the freedom and could come to school with dyed hair? I mean that freedom is more important for a teenager, freedom to express themselves, more than anything. We can use via our children. Usual approach when a delegated adult tells children what's right and what's wrong, and how to love your country. It doesn't work. All you need is to take the teenager from Mariupol and better a few. And not only from Mariupol, those children evacuated on the Ukrainian part, and take them to London and give them a chance to live in London where they can meet their peers, possibly some school. They need to see what is to live in freedom and what we are fighting for. Otherwise, how would you explain to a child what we are fighting for? We adults understand these things. For kids, it is only words. What are you talking about? It is not tangible for them. Teenagers don't trust even their parents. That's why they are struggling to understand. It would have been a different story if they can feel and touch it, this meaning of a free world. They will understand the difference and will communicate it through, without our involvement with those who are under occupation. That's the way how we can direct our future generations to the light side of history. They will have own reasons to comprehend our words of freedom and independence. This is how it works. Supposed to. Yeah, I think it works.
Your answer on the question about children gravitating into question how the world community can support. I mean, those people who watch our interview right now, these are the only first months of my podcast. But in the comments, I can see people from Scandinavia, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. I'm so excited to see the English language opens the door to the whole wide world. You partly answered on my question, but I'm sure it is more to it, more aspects. So, how the world community can support the people in the occupation? There are different of them. Some can't find ways and opportunities to be part of the resistance, but they wait for Ukraine. Some already helped resistance. So, how Western people can support Ukraine here?
It's the difficult one. I need to think. I don't know. I would focus on children programs and supporting kids in Ukraine from the occupied territories, not on adults, the most important people in these circumstances and the most neglected by adults. It is children. If to concentrate the work on kids, then we ensure our future. We as adults, we will manage. Ideally, it would be great to establish big programs for kids. I know it is possible. The community can play their role and have our kids for a long time. I don't mean years. Just long enough for them to feel the life that somebody is trying to take away. That's exactly how it is. I don't know how exactly. But they should be able to live and go to school there in some towns and cities, going together to the picnics and adventure parks. We understand that different countries and different approaches, traditions, and cultural differences on freedom to each other, private property. Children should feel it on their own skin right now. They need to realize why they should learn English and what is it the world music. Let's face the reality, there's no Ukrainian teenager able to get to the concert of the top world star, even to neighboring Warsaw. Because it is expensive and difficult. How many would like to see it and be there? How the aid for Ukraine would change if the stars could meet our kids and talk to them, not only adults all the time. The world community can do it. It looks like we always asking for something. It is not because we don't do anything. It is only because we need so much, and it never ends, one on the top of another. We run out of our energy. This kind of help would be great. Then these kids go back to their parents who would be more motivated to fight, and they do need some break. Think, every day we live under attacks. On the daily basis, you decided go to the bomb shelter or not. Are we going to be okay or not? When you have a child or several, one day someone take you kid and take somewhere nice and safe for a few months. As a parent, you are happy for your child and can have a break. If being honest, it is the key thing, because it is about future. We need to take care of our future.
Thank you very much. I'm endlessly grateful for what you said today. It is very important, and usually it is lost in the world of the fast social media and shocking videos. Before we say goodbye, let's remember those whom we lost. Do we know the exact number of the killed civilians in Mariupol during the first months after the full-scale invasion? I mean, those who never been properly buried. When injured fathers, mothers, grandparents escaped and children were left killed in their flats. Are we talking here of dozens of thousands or hundreds of thousands?
Dozens. Official number is 25,000 buried. I mean those mass burial. Of course it is a bigger number, but it is not the 100,000. There is a very cynical and terrible thing about killed civilians. It is our perception. During the first week of the blockade, when our services were still able to pick up the bodies, The feeling we had, it was 1,000, where in fact it is only 50 bodies. I know who and what numbers say, and I know why they say it, but they all far from the truth. Very far. We are sure there were killed 25,000 people. I don't know how many we didn't count. For now it is 25.
It is difficult to comprehend.
It is hard. Nobody in the world can imagine it. That's why the journalists work this way and tell the story of one person, and not all 25,000. This statistic is shocking, and you can't digest it. It is like a town in Ukraine that vanished. European town disappeared. Imagine, everyone has gone. That's how many people dies in Mariupol.
I don't think we can process it.
To grasp,
Definitely not. Otherwise, you won't be able to go back to your reality with problems like what's for lunch or what's for dinner. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I hope the issues we talked through today will resonate with our viewers and end up with something great for these children. Absolutely true. It is our future. I wish you well, lots of strength, inspiration. I hope you will be surrounded with reliable and very strong partners in your fight to make the resistance big and powerful, and the resurrection of Mariupol will be very strong and successful, with happy end. Take care and goodbye.
thank you, goodbye.
Thank you for watching. Today we looked into life in the occupation and opportunities and the fight for Ukraine, for freedom, for the victory, and to that another aspect of the resistant movement. And today we talked about Mariupol and the advisor to Mariupol mayor, Petro Andriushchenko. Please share your thoughts. Maybe our conversation inspired you to some other ideas how to support these children from the occupied territories, how to help Ukraine on this front line or this battle for the future. And I appreciate all your likes, comments, you sharing, all your kind words. It means a lot to me. And please keep doing it, and hopefully this podcast channel will grow and we will reach further and more people. Thank you very much. I'm Jenny Klochko. Take care. Have a great day.